It's
All right.
it's my favorite line from Good Will Hunting.
All right, with that, let's begin. Episode, 65 of Boroughs and Burbs. This week, we've got Dominating Social. Samantha Yanks, founder of Samantha Yanks Creative and the Connecticut Edit, but most of you probably know her as the editor-in-chief of Gotham Magazine and Hamptons Magazine. And with her this week, when I said Samantha Yanks is going to be on the show, before I get to Jonathan, I said Samantha Yanks is going to be on the show, and Roberto's reaction was, wait, the Samantha Yanks? And I thought to myself, well, how many Samantha Yanks are there? Of course it's the Samantha Yanks. And he was like, oh, that is so exciting. We have got to get Jonathan Stein. So I think that begs the question, who is Jonathan Stein and why did we have to get him on the show? So let me give a little introduction. Jonathan Stein, from what I can tell, is the super agent who sold $100 million in luxury real estate every year of his life. And for him, I guess social media is a dominant part of his business, and he's definitely selling luxury. So, Roberto, is that why it was important to get Jonathan Stein on the show with the Samantha Yanks?
Absolutely. Whenever I know Jonathan personally, and I just know how he functions, and he's prolific in his production of social media, and I figured he had to be here.
Thanks, and he's buddy. Highly curated. I have to say, the dominant image when you look at Jonathan Stein's social media is of Jonathan Stein in a motorcycle. And I think, what better image than a motorcycle when you're trying to sell $100 million worth of real estate? 20 million at a time, right, Jonathan?
It works. I don't question it. I just want to come across as authentic as possible, and that's me to a T. My hands down favorite thing to do on this planet. If I couldn't sell real estate for a living and I could pick anything to do, it'd be racing motorcycles.
I love that. Okay. Are you also in the Hamptons? Is that a connection between you and Samantha? Are you also selling out there?
I do the Hamptons as well. The connection with Samantha, though we've never met, is she's just such a legend. Everyone that knows her says just everything's the best things about her, that she's just the most amazing person, that everyone's surprised we haven't met. So I think this is such an awesome, first encounter for us to have. And Samantha, it's such a pleasure to meet you.
Awesome to meet you. I've heard the same. And okay, all of you are really teeing me up here. I feel like I could say absolutely nothing. I'm going to come across well. Thank you so much. It's really cool to be here. I can't wait to chat. And funnily enough, Jonathan, if you were to ride motorcycles, I guess already this is not a disconnect, but it's kind of funny. I do not know how to ride a bicycle. So I have zero balance. When you go into those conversations, like, tell people one thing that they can't imagine about you. Mine is I don't know how to ride a bicycle. So see, I have many problems before being amazing.
So it's a fortuitous meeting. When my wife and I met, she could hardly ride a bicycle, and now she rides a motorcycle. So it's a short road there.
So buy a helmet.
I'll stick with you too.
Yes.
So Jonathan and I met out in the Hamptons, I guess, last month for the Hamptons Classic. I'm not a regular in the Hamptons. I don't understand the Hamptons. I went out there to the Hamptons to look around. My parents, had a house in the Hamptons in 1972 and decided it was too hard to get to. And they sold it for $75,000 and moved to Connecticut. And I think Samantha recently moved, out to Connecticut. So I don't know, maybe Samantha, maybe you can talk to us about the Connecticut market and the Hamptons market, and we can begin, and the New York market, and we can begin with that.
I feel like I'm taking a big bite here, but I will say, just kind of going into my intro, I was the editor-in-chief of Hamptons for many years and Gotham. And so I had the great luxury of not only living that lifestyle, but really understanding kind of like what made those communities tick. The Hamptons is such a special place. It really, truly is. It has so many different personalities, enclaves, ways to kind of celebrate it depending on what you love. Like, do you love living by the beach? Do you find that relaxing? You were referencing the Hampton Classic, do you enjoy horseback riding? Is being outdoors in nature part of what you love? Do you really love amazing luxury shopping? You're probably going to gravitate more towards East Hampton. Do you love the restaurant scene? Do you want an area that feels very different than Manhattan, or do you want something that feels similar? But all in all, it's such an exquisite place to be. And probably, I would argue, and I don't think any of you will disagree, probably some of the best real estate in the world, certainly in this country, but I would argue probably in the world. And New York is where I grew up. I grew up on the Upper East Side. And so I'm a through and through New Yorker. I'll always love it. But about 2 years ago, it was not a COVID move, but I happened to move during COVID. We moved to Westport, Connecticut. So we abandoned Hamptons and New York City ship and now live full time in Westport, which I'm sure we'll get into later. But with the lovely intro that you gave me, I am no longer the editor-in-chief of Hamptons and Gotham, but I started my own kind of my own mini media company, and we're starting it with the Connecticut Edit. So I'm sure we'll get into that at some point. But yeah, I loved the way that you announced this. You said Samantha's all in on Connecticut, and I am, but I will never stop loving the Hamptons in New York City.
So you're in Westport now.
I am in Westport now, live from my library.
Big difference from the Hamptons, Westport, Hamptons.
What I'll say is what really drew us to Westport is that it's a coastal town. So we just gravitate to wanting to live by the water. Both my husband, my daughter, and our yellow lab just want to be on the water, near the water all the time. And with that comes not the fact that we're just simply water people, but it's just a very relaxing community. And nice proximity to the city, driving or train, and then also wonderful ferry ride to the Hamptons. So we're kind of in this perfect place, amazing proximity to everything. And I just love the New England lifestyle. It was time for all of us for a change. My daughter's a competitive tennis player. We really wanted to be somewhere where that was truly part of our life. That is very challenging in Manhattan. I highly respect anyone who can pull that off. And we just didn't live in the Hamptons full time. We wanted to be in a place where that could work into a very, very challenging sophomore school schedule in high school, and someplace that my husband and I really loved. We'd been coming to the area for so long. My parents actually have a house in Connecticut as well, but they're in Litchfield County. We're in Fairfield County. So we knew this is where we wanted to be. We started looking at homes. As you all know, with real estate, we fell in love with the one that we bought, and absolutely love it.
So switching a little bit into social media, you were the editor-in-chief of 2 magazines and a tastemaker in the Hamptons and in Gotham. You've now made the switch to Connecticut. You're all in on Connecticut. And so the obvious next question is, how important is social in 2022 and beyond when you're trying to be a tastemaker and you're trying to tell people about the best of the Hamptons or the best of Connecticut? How important has social become in 2022 to that mix? Moving from magazines into what I presume is an entirely social platform?
Yeah, we are the Connecticut Edit. We launched it about 1.5 years ago. It is primarily digital. We have started with more experiences, event activation, but we do not have a print component. And we actually launched and stayed the course of only having a social media presence. We don't even have, I own the domain, so no one go out there and try to get it. But we haven't launched our site because the truth is the demand we're finding from our followers is they want the immediacy. They don't need anything long form. They're not looking for more than we're providing. And if they are, and I'm sure all of you can attest to this in real estate, they're going to DM you, they're going to text you, they're going to figure out a way, but it's not by picking up a magazine or going to a website. They will track you down to find out what they need. They'll ping you as much as you know, all know those pings are coming through. So we decided, I launched the Connecticut Edit with my daughter. Her name's Sadie. She's 15. And so we launched it during COVID because we had the time together. We had moved to this new community. We were loving it so much, but we just weren't finding a resource for the information that we wanted. And we weren't finding it quickly enough. And that is really where I guess to your question, where social media comes down to. It's like, I want it when I want it, and I want it at the right time, and I want it to be delivered in the right format. And so, for us, I think to get our message across, social media through a multitude of platforms has been the best and most effective way to do that. And I'm definitely the type of person who, never say never. I could see us I would probably launch a coffee table book because I love them so much quicker than I would launch, a monthly or bi-monthly print component. It's not where my drive is any longer, not because I don't think it's an important medium at all. I am a voracious reader of print. But for us, and as in terms of this conversation, I think social media is where it's at in terms of delivering the type of information that we're delivering and that our followers are looking for.
What are the platforms that you're using, and how would you prioritize? Like if you could only do one or two versus the next 3 or 4 or 5?
Can I turn something over to Jonathan? Will you? Okay, I'm going to keep answering.
I'm fixated on this. I'm loving
All right,
watching.
fine. So I would say, for me, listen, a part of why we launched this together, my daughter and I, is because we wanted, and I also think something that simply doesn't really exist, the way that we deliver information, is I really wanted something multi-generational. This is not about, oh, I'm no longer the editor-in-chief of Hamptons and Gotham. I really miss being an editor, therefore I'm going to launch this. It really came very organically out of a place where, I would text people or try to pick up, different pieces of information and say, can you just tell me the 5 best restaurants in Greenwich and in Westport? And I simply couldn't find it. I mean, it was truly as simple as that. And when I started putting together those listicles or, bits and pieces of information, suddenly, simply because of what I had done, previously, I suddenly became known as this person. Oh, well, just text Samantha, she'll know. All the people who moved to Connecticut from New York, they're like, okay, who's the person to go to get your hair cut and colored? And it's just like, when you become that go-to person, you just, rather than people texting me all the time or calling me, I just kind of would put it out there. So for me, to answer, Roberta, your question, my primary platforms are Instagram, really Instagram. I link everything to Facebook, and I definitely will be 100% honest about it. I do not track it. Like I work for clients in marketing and branding. That's all I do is track their, is to look at traction for them. I don't really look at our own. I'll be honest about that. Facebook, I think for us is we're not creating fresh new content for that. It is simply what we put up on Instagram. So that's our primary platform. But what I'll say, and to bring my daughter into this, is Instagram, yes, but for her, it's about be real. And what does that look like? And what does the TikTok component look like? What does the Snapchat component look like? We do not put out our handles on all of those platforms, because I don't think it's necessary at this moment. But I'm also very protective of what she's doing. And those platforms, I think, are primarily younger audience. I'm the first one now to say I'm 46. I know what I know. I do not know how to do a TikTok dance. I do not want to. I got Be Real. My daughter made fun of me. She told me to take down my first Be Real post. So I pay attention to every platform. I think all of them have their own purpose. For the Connecticut Edit, I will say primarily at this moment, Instagram is where it's at for us.
Jonathan, the same for you? Instagram is your.
It is, but I want to know more about Be Real. Is that a platform or is that a component of TikTok?
No, it's a platform. And basically, you get a notification, and within 2 minutes, you have to post on it. And it can't be from your photo feed. It has to be a new picture that you've taken. And it has two components to it. It's the photo that you've taken. It would almost look like you and I do right now. It's the photo that you've taken, and then up in the right corner, it's your face while you're taking it. And then it disappears the way Snapchat does. So
You
it's
just
only
made
up.
me feel like a boomer. So thank you for
I
educating
mean,
me
I'm
on
like
a new
a
platform.
grandma in comparison to you.
Oh my
so like the
God.
fact that I even know what I'm saying is simply because I have a 15-year-old.
Yeah, you've got a hedge there.
So Jonathan,
Jonathan,
how
you just
important is social when you're trying to sell $20 million brownstones? I have encountered clients who say to me, okay, you can put me on social media, but none of that funny business. And I'm like, oh, wait, what does that mean? You think
Yeah,
that
what kind
this
of
is-
funny business do you do, John?
Well, they don't
I
like
know, I
humor.
love
They
this.
want they want it to, they want to be presented as if it was a glossy magazine. And they are
Yeah.
many times mistrustful of social media as a way to present luxury real estate. So I wanted to understand, on the one hand, Samantha lives and breathes and is expert in social media, but I really wanted to understand from somebody who sells $20 million and up brownstones, whether you get any resistance to it, or is everybody now all in on social media?
Well, as a testament to Samantha's point, she understands social media, but she also lives and breathes, a luxury lifestyle for luxury brands that she's worked with for years. I mean, Hamptons Magazine is just such a classic. Again, such an honor to be, on here with her. I don't meet much resistance anymore when I discuss social media with a client. If a seller doesn't understand social media, they lean into that and articulate that they don't understand it, and that they count on someone like me who does ostensibly understand it to work on that for them. But like you said, no one wants funny business, to use your term. They want their property represented with dignity, and they also want as many eyeballs on it as possible, and there's a way to do both with social media. We don't do TikTok dances, property tours. It's a way to reach the masses in a really cool and cutting edge way, and show properties to people that may not see them otherwise. A lot of our buyers in New York religiously, scroll Street Easy every day and the other listing sites. Instagram is an interesting way to break that barrier, whereas maybe the buyer themselves are not checking social media, but potentially their friends are, their children are. So it's a way to reach as many people as possible, and you can control the narrative. You can control the lens through which they see properties. So
How do you
we found it
balance
to be a very effective tool.
How do you balance your content? Like, for example, you go from a $20 million photograph of a couple of $20 million places, and then I got another picture of you. You're sitting by a pool. You got a cigar in your mouth, and there's just smoke all over your face. How do you, which is the best. But how do you balance your content?
That's a great question, Roberto. And Roberto and I have been friends for a long time, and he's always been such an awesome sounding board for me to bounce these off of. It's just always been important for me to be as authentic as possible. And I could throw a rock out the window right now and hit a dozen other people that do what we do. And they pick us because, they trust our judgment. They respect our work ethic and accolades in the space, but also our clients like hanging out with us. They trust our judgment. They know that we can, distinguish for them what will work and what won't. And at the end of the day, we're sitting next to them in an Uber, cruising around looking at properties. So I have to try and be my authentic self, because that's all we can be. So for Instagram, there's no, in my opinion, no one wants to go on my Instagram and see, a watermark just listed on a property. It's not what I do. It's not what works for me. A lot of people do it and they're very successful at it, but I like to blend my career and my personal life so that when someone looks at it, they can see the real me, and it doesn't feel so contrived. It doesn't feel all about real estate, because while I am a real estate broker, like I hope to God there's more that defines me as a person than that. I've had people like introduce me at parties like, oh, this is Jonathan the broker. I'm like, oof, man, like there's so many other avenues I'd like, Jonathan's a nice guy. He used to work in finance. Now he works in real estate. Like, I mean, that's kind of what I'm going for. It's when it has to be the main identifying component of who I am. I like it to come across in a positive way where I don't try too hard to be cool or give you what I think you want to see. It's just me. It's just my most authentic self. And Instagram is my only platform. Facebook lost me a couple of elections back, and Instagram has been more than sufficient for me. I have
How
TikTok.
often do you have to post on Instagram? When I look at this, it doesn't occur to me that you have to say something to your followers every day. But when
No.
you do say something, it's beautiful. It's a beautiful shot, and it tells
Jonathan,
a story of your life.
I mean, John, remember there are two components to Instagram. His posts are a little bit more selective. His stories are unbelievable. They're 10, 15, 20 a day.
Yeah.
It's a lot.
So that's a good point. The stories are up for 24 hours, so I can be a bit more sporadic with those. I can, it was my brother's birthday yesterday. I got to spend the day with him, which was really cool. So posted some photos of us together on the timeline as like a birthday post, but also, kind of chronicled our day for because they're up for 24 hours. So it's a pretty easy way of doing that and keeping track of where you're at. And, again, it lets people feel like they're hanging with me for 24 hours. And, I obviously showed yesterday I was not at work. So had to be okay with that, but was still on my phone.
It's brilliant.
Yeah. This is a photo of my grandparents, Randolph and Mortimer.
Love that.
Duke.
I love that.
Yeah. So I have fun with it. I don't take it too seriously. I try not to whack people over the head with it. And I feel like, if you peruse that, you see what's important to me, you see what I'm all about, what I do for a living. But no one thing like makes me up for who I am. So it's
I think that's so important though, right? Like, I mean, we can talk all day long about algorithms and analytics and all of that. But the truth of it is, the algorithms are constantly changing. So depending on how much attention you're paying to that, it is kind of a losing battle sometimes. But I think, like Jonathan, what makes your feed so great, to what Roberta is saying too, is it's like what resonates for us too. It's what's organic, what's natural. And it's not about posting on the static feed necessarily every day. On my personal feed, I don't at all. Actually, I realized when I posted the invitation for this event that we're doing right now, I hadn't posted on my static feed, my personal one, in a really long time. I post on stories all the time. And then for the Connecticut Edit, we're all about stories. That is something that's happening now. For people who, and that is where algorithms come into play, and why you're probably doing so well with that also, is because that really gets bumped up in people's feeds. If you're posting all the time on stories, it's really more valuable than posting on your static feed. If you're sitting around,
people can get burned out, right?
Yeah. Like if you're sitting around waiting for likes on your static feed, you're in trouble. And the truth of it is, with stories, you actually see analytics very, very quickly, and you can look back at them very easily. And it is much more complex to do that on the feed. But I love that. I mean, yes, it's there 24 hours, but I also don't even think about it as like living a day in 24 hours on stories. And it's so true. It's like, what's going on for you? Some days it's real estate, some days it's family, some days it's this, some days it's that. And I can't imagine anyone, no matter how much they love real estate for you or the state of Connecticut, for me, they don't, that's all they want to see, right? They just want to see real life. And that's what resonates for people.
Well, it can also be a bit of a detractor as well. Like, I find if you're posting, because people on social media, viewers, followers, what have you, they want to see the goods. They want to see townhouses. They want to see penthouses. They want to see crazy property tours. And the flip side of that is, if I'm posting that all the time without fail, I'll be at lunch with someone and they'll say, "Oh, I just sold my apartment. I just rented something." And I'm like, "Well, I could have helped. I could have been a part of that." And they're like, "Oh no, like you only do the big stuff." Yeah, I don't want to. And for me, like, that hurts so bad when I hear that, because it makes me feel like I've done a disservice to people close to me. Like, I grew up in a town in Maryland of 170 people. It was my dream to live in New York my whole life. Like, I didn't grow up in this world. It's something that, I've gotten to be around through this profession, and just being in New York and meeting, very cool, successful, driven people. And, the last thing I ever want to do is make someone feel like they can't come to me because I'm not going to care. Like, that's the last thing I ever want to, encapsulate.
We have the same
who I am.
thing too. We have the same thing with what we cover. We do a lot of what we've seen on the Connecticut Edit that's been super successful are all of these giveaways. It's not, oh, I'm wearing the same top in that. Uh-oh, double. And I'm in the same spot.
Anthony.
It's a good spot.
But a lot of what, giveaways were never really my specialty. I didn't really know all that much about them, but it's something that we do very, very frequently on the Connecticut Edit. And what I've realized so quickly, and exactly to what you're saying, is like our followers responded to a giveaway for a bunch of fresh cut dahlia flowers as much as they did to a $400 cashmere sweater. It's really like, we always want to tell that whole story too. And I think you do a really awesome job. And I to pat ourselves, oh, that's my dog Wonton, everybody. To pat ourselves on the back a little bit, is like, we treat, we show all of that through a luxury lens. And I think you do an amazing job at that, whether it's flowers or it's tomatoes. And people joke about my love of farm stands. I love them.
Love it.
But whether it's flowers, it's tomatoes, or it's, the brand new like Land Rover Defender, I look at everything exactly through the same lens. And if it's not beautiful to me, it doesn't belong, it doesn't belong on the feed. And which is why probably, sometimes like people will say, like, they say to you, "Oh my God, does anything like, you never post anything bad?" I'm like, "Oh, well, all the bad stuff, you got to go to the Connecticut." Oh, look, there we are. But
how much on your feed today?
Yeah, no, you got to go to the Connecticut Edit, switch it up, not my personal.
Okay.
But no, of course, there's ups and downs, there's this and that. It's just, that's the complexity of social media. Like, do you always put across, the positivity? For me, I do. And it's not because the negative isn't happening. It's because I actually think Instagram and all of these spaces can be and should be super, super positive. It's a platform to be able to like spread goodness. And and that's what we use it for.
So we're talking about dominating social media. So let me ask something. Do you guys approach this like do you approach it as part of your job? Do you approach it as, I know at least for Jonathan, it's a part of his life. It's just he's just constantly kind of documenting how he goes through his life, and he shares that, and it becomes very authentic. But Jonathan, even for you, do you feel, you have an extremely busy day? At the end of the day, you're like, I haven't posted anything. I got to put some stuff up. Are you compelled to do that? Do you feel you have to do that?
It's become such a part of my routine now. I don't really have those days where I get bogged down with it. There's days where I can't post things. Like, I have a tour tomorrow where my phone's not going to come out of my pocket the whole time. So yeah, it would be super helpful to be able to post that, but I know I can't do it because of a client and because of listings, and like I'm so okay with that. Like I don't need to be the guy that's documenting for the sake of documenting, especially, you know, when it's not in the client's best interest. So yeah, it's fun to do. It gamifies our job. It mixes it up. Like I like being funny where I can with social media, but like at the end of the day, it just shows people where I am and what I'm up to and that I'm good at it. So
Does it actually sell houses?
cool.
Does
Yeah.
it actually? Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
How do you know? I think every
Oh,
agent on this
man.
call is wondering, does it actually, it helps your brand, but does it actually connect people to the product?
I didn't think so. And then a few Decembers back, maybe when I really started leaning into social media, like 5 years ago, I had someone send me a message that had been following me for a while and commented on things from time to time, and said that she had been working with an agent and they didn't really vibe well and wanted to work with me. So we had an initial call to find more about, you know, what they were looking for, and you know, they wanted to buy two townhouses in the West Village and combine them, and you know, had a chat with the family office and got the go ahead, and it was just from social media, and just I can't explain it. It's just a somewhat organic approach to it. So I've gotten buyers from it. I've gotten sellers from it. I have a lot of stories about it. So it's something that I get asked about very regularly to divulge what the secret is. And you know, it's been said many times, if you're good at something, never do it for free. So it's been working.
So tell me if this conclusion is correct, but what you're doing is you're using social media to let people get to know you and whether they want to work with you. And Samantha, it seems to me, approaches it from the background of magazine, where she puts out what you call it, lists.
We do listicles.
Listicles.
Oh, yeah,
I
everyone's
love
gonna
that
have new
word.
verbiage at the end of this.
Listicles and best restaurant and recipe and lots of flowers and the lifestyle. And so are you communicating information, the best of Fairfield County, the best of the Hamptons, and therefore people think of it as a resource for information, whereas Jonathan is taking a much more personal approach? Am I making too much of a leap here, where we just want to see how you think and how you see the world, and I could have a beer with that guy, so I want to get to know him and I want him to sell my house?
Exactly. I got into the world of real estate on the later side. Many of my friends and now clients had people that they had already done trades with, that they had rented from. Everyone knows at least 10 real estate agents in the city. We all get the newsletters incessantly. So I had to do something to distinguish myself and differentiate me from everyone else. And I thought that the most authentic way to do that was by being authentic. So it's something I really leaned into.
I
I'll
think
say also as like a buyer, I mean, I bought my house 2.5 years ago, and I hadn't bought or sold in a really long time. We'd been in our apartment in the West Village for many, many years, and our house in the Hamptons for 10 plus years. So it had been some time. And I really forgot how personal your relationship is with your broker. Like that is a relationship that is so much based on having kind of the same visual vibe, language, and you have to jive together. So I totally understand for you like why that makes sense. To me, it would be very challenging, I think, to be very successful with what you do without that social media piece, because you want to know who you're trusting with your money. That's what this comes down to, and your taste, right? I'm entrusting someone when we move to Westport to find for me what I love. And that was not an easy task. And that is a whole lot of trust and social media. And I think your approach, Jonathan, is so spot on, which is you get to know someone, like, do they like kind of the same vibe as me? Not as simple as, oh, they like modern and I like modern, let's go. Meaning like the way they live their life, what they enjoy. Are they going to understand that, like, we love to go out to eat, we have a dog, we have that, it's like, I want to know your vibe, and is your vibe my vibe? And I don't
I
know
couldn't
how
have said
else
it any
you do
better.
that.
That's great.
Like, I don't know how else you do that without social media. I wouldn't even know how to pick a broker without that, personally.
No, it's so true.
There's a lot of my daughter in there. Sorry.
She's beautiful.
But that's
very-
interesting to me. You say, I'm sorry. Why? I mean, what we just heard from
I
John.
don't know. I mean,
Is it very few of his posts or brownstones?
yeah, I don't like to, I need to do, like, I talk to Jonathan and stuff. I need to put more real estate oriented things in there.
Why?
I don't want to be, I don't know. I'm just not that guy. I don't know. So
I think it's great though. You
need
look
to
at
find
Roberta,
that
you look at your Instagram, it's like, he's a good dude. He
Yeah.
cares about his family. He lives in New York. Like, he lives a fun life. His, kids crazy about him. Like, I think it's exactly what you should be doing,
I agree. Done, Roberto. Don't change anything.
Yeah.
So Samantha, I wanted to ask you a question specifically. You have a certain philosophy of how you approach social media, because you've changed kind of markets and in some ways maybe changed professions in a certain way. Has your philosophy changed?
What I'll say is, I want to kind of second and maybe to like take a little stab at this one as well. I think something that Jonathan said that's really important and is underplayed often is, like, social media for me is not a burden. The minute it becomes a burden, then things will change. I love it. I love discovering things. I love observing. I love, finding either what other people haven't, or a different take on it, or packaging it together with other wonderful things, making introductions. I love all of that. Like, connecting to people on DM brings me joy. My husband doesn't understand it, but it's just who I am, right? I love that someone's laughing at that. And drinking a Diet Coke like I am, whoever that is. Hi. So, he doesn't understand that. And I understand that he doesn't understand that. It brings him no joy. Every time my phone comes out, he's like, here we go again. Like, we can't eat dinner without Samantha taking a photo. We can't do that. But I enjoy it. I don't do that because it's an obligation or in any way, shape, or form. And I think in part it's because I was such an early adopter to social. I think I looked at my start date or whatever that's called on Instagram, and I was like, oh my God, that is so long ago. Like, I was really early on this.
How painful are the early posts when you look back at them?
I deleted
Mine
some
are
of those.
painful. Oh my God.
Well, now you can archive things, but back then you couldn't even archive things. So I deleted. But, but I mean it just to the point that I love it. I love taking photos. I love posting them. I don't use filters. It's not part of my game. I like taking photos in natural light. Like, I have my own vibe and my jam. Now, oh yeah.
So Samantha and Jonathan both, I like Instagram. I'm comfortable, reasonably comfortable. What is the difference between doing a personal and a business account? I do everything on a personal account. Should I get into a business account?
I feel like that's a better question for Jonathan. I mean, I have two. I'll take a quick stab at it. I have two. I have my, Samantha Yanks personal feed. Everyone doesn't understand why I don't post on it often enough. Like, it's verified. I don't even know how I'm verified. It's verified. I could post on it. I have almost 40,000 followers on it. I don't really leverage it. I don't really use it but here's the reason. And it just depends on how it applies to you. I post all the time on the Connecticut Edit, not verified, is hovering maybe close to 5,000 followers, because to me, it's very clear what belongs there. It's super distinct. Like, while it's organic, it all goes through this lens of it has Connecticut connectivity, it's current, it makes sense, people want this information. On my own personal, even John just said, I haven't posted on that in a long time. I think if you have the ability to combine two, I've always found that very challenging. But if you have the ability to combine two, and this is where I think Jonathan is like such a better person to answer this, then yes. But I also in my profession handle social media for businesses. So I'm always looking at everything through what the lens is supposed to be, right? And like my own personal lens, my Instagram's like kind of messy right now. Like I'm the first one to admit it, but the Connecticut Edit, I wake up and I go to sleep and I think about it. I'm like, I want to post about this. I want people to know about this, you know, like there's no question. On my own, I'm like, I don't
You
know.
go to bed thinking about the Connecticut Edit?
Yes,
It's
I
her
do.
business.
I do. I think about how I'm going to grow it. I think about how I'm going to differentiate it. I think about how I'm going to monetize it. I think about like, is there a purpose for it? How is it different? But that's fun for me. Like, that's the thing. And I think to what Jonathan's saying also, it's like, what brings you joy? Like content creation in its simplest sense brings me joy. I love it. And I will never, like any client that I consult with and work with, it's always through a content lens. Like, how are you delivering information? What should it look like? And whether that's a real estate listing, a piece of jewelry, a lipstick, an airplane, it doesn't matter. It's all the same thing. Like, remember back in the day when you wrote an invitation and you're like, who, what, when, and why? That's it. It's like, what's the why? Why do people need this information? They need it because, you know, they have disposable income and they're like looking for, like, just what's the why all the time. And that's where I think personal feeds get a little mucky. It's like, I don't know why people need to know what's going on in my personal life. I know why people want to know what's going on in the Connecticut Edit. And that's why, like, working with my clients, it's so easy for me. It's a no-brainer. It's like, it always makes sense. So I hope I'm not
Jonathan,
babbling and answering something.
do you advertise in print anymore?
I don't know. I never have.
Postcards?
Nope. I've
Direct
done
mail? Nothing?
I've done postcards twice. And I think 98% of them came back to the office. So it was it works for a lot of people. It does not work for me. It was not something I was very successful at. So you know, I leaned into what worked for me.
All right. So both of you, can you give Scott Hobbs, so he's in the little square underneath you, can you give him some advice? Because he runs a very successful luxury business. He builds luxury homes in the Hamptons and in Westport. And he advertises in the glossy magazines. He said for him, he's got to show the product and he's got to do it in a beautiful way. And he's got to communicate to people that he's capable of building houses of this quality. And whenever I give, I try to embarrass Scott Hobbs and say, why aren't you on social? He's like, you know what? I know I need to be there. I know I need to do more of that. But for guys like Scott Hobbs and myself, it's hard. I don't have that many followers. I'm not that curated. I'm not that pretty. And I don't go to bed thinking about the Connecticut Edit before I go to sleep. So what advice do you have for regular guys like Scott Hobbs who are having trouble basically making the leap out of glossy magazines into your world?
It's
One quick defense under this. I fully understand the glossy magazines are not necessarily the best way to reach the clients, as opposed to actually access to the networking events and other sort of activities. So sorry, go ahead from there.
You create an exquisite product, which people need to see. And you need to, and what I think just for you, you probably need to just hire a social media person who starts to populate that for you. But what do I know?
I was
Well,
going to
Scott
say,
Hobbs, give me a call.
It seems like he's doing something right because he's building amazing homes in the Hamptons and in Connecticut and is advertising in glossy magazines. My brother Alex is the head of social for a digital agency called M18 that does PR and social and marketing for real estate, mainly new development projects in the city in Miami. And he's had a lot of people come to him with that question. And more often than not, the answer is like, just do what you're good at. You know, if it's glossy magazines, it's that. If it's not social, it doesn't have to be. You know, there's so many agents in New York who have been doing it a lot longer than me, who are massively successful. And I don't really feel like they need to lean into social. If it's not their thing, you know, just do what you're good at, do what works, do what your audience wants to see, and just lean into that.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, what I'll say is I certainly listen, I'm the former editor-in-chief of two glossy magazines. I am
The
pro
glossiest.
glossy everything, believe me. And I'm not in any way, shape, or form saying at all that there isn't a place for them at all. I think to what Jonathan's saying is if something works and that is, and that's the platform that works for you, don't ever be guilted into doing social. And I think Jonathan and I would 100% agree, not to speak for you, Jonathan, because like I don't do that, but I'm just going to go for this one. What works for us and the reason we're both successful at it is because it's natural to us. It is simply part, like the way Jonathan said, he doesn't think at the end of the day, like, oh shit, I didn't post. It's like he would never not post because unless like he's clamped down and obviously someone doesn't want him to, but like it just is a natural part of his day, the way it's naturally part of my day. It's like, I open the fridge and I take out like a bottle of water or a Diet Coke. Like posting on social media is like the same thing. Like it is not, I don't give it a second thought. That said, I think to what everyone is like saying here, there are professionals out there. And if they're, if it's something that you personally, and I'm not saying Scott Hobbs, like, and generalizing you, but for anybody, if it's not something that comes naturally to you, there are plenty of professionals out there who can help you. And I think part of that, and goes back to a lot of what we've been saying here, is it's all about the right fit. It's not as simple as like, oh, I'm going to find somebody who has a lot of followers, who's had this client, who's had that client. It's like, do they understand building in a luxury real estate market? Do they understand like the consumer wants to see the process? That's what's effective for us. Do they want to see the breadth of our work? Do they want to see, product like projects from beginning to end? And you like leading them and saying, this is like, when people come to us, they say they cannot believe that they bought a piece of land and we built them this. If that's your story or whatever it is, it's all about the content and figuring out what this story is. But you are in, like, in terms of Connecticut and the Hamptons, two of the world's biggest luxury markets. And there are certainly viewers, followers, consumers out there who want to see that. And the great part about social in a field that you're in is you are creating beautiful things, very expensive, big, beautiful things. And people like to see that. They want to get their hands on that content. And then the other piece I would say, and I know is like, huge in the real estate industry and huge in mine, it's just how do you activate? How do you get people into your world? And that is where social is such an amazing tool, right? Whether it's behind the scenes of, project beginning to end and you hyperlapse things, or you're taking people on hard hat tours, or you're taking people on like a walk around town near a project that you're building. Just more touch points of how people can understand what's going on. Like, I want everything on this feed. Is this Scott? Like, what's going on here? I don't even know what I'm looking at. I'm talking so much, but it's gorgeous. Yeah, like what is that? But
that's a $30 million barn that Scott Hobbs built. And what's surprising to me is that 150,000 people haven't liked that. And that's what I think, this is a beautiful page. And I'm wondering, what's the difference between Jonathan Stein and his motorcycle just blowing up the internet versus this amazing $30 million barn? And so, why is it
I'd like to see a couple of pictures of Scott on there.
I think if Scott bought a motorcycle, he'd do twice as good.
I would hope so.
Pictures of Scott on site, whatever. I'd like to see who's behind that.
I do think that personality component. What?
All I heard was that John needs to stop guilting me.
John, let's talk about you for a second. Let's talk about you for a second. Go to your feed, because there he is. But you have you've been trying to push, and you've been pushing me. You're like, you got to post more. You got to do this. You got to do that. You should do this TikTok and that TikTok. My daughter's got this. She's got 400,000 views and all this kind of thing. And I mean, what has changed in your philosophy and what has worked or not worked with you making an emphasis of really trying to push into that?
All right.
What have you found?
So here's mine. And one thing you're going to notice is that mine's a lot less beautiful than any of the pages that we've seen today. There's a lot of clips from, some from my life, like my trip to LA, but a whole lot from my talking about the business, talking with you on this show, a lot of clips from this show. And I've been told by the experts, they said, it's important that you post every day. So start getting in the habit. So that's what I've done. The second thing they said to me is it's important to put up videos. So it's a mixture, you see, of house videos, and there's a house video, there's a house video, there's a family picture, and then there's a couple videos, clips from Boroughs and Burbs shows. So it's a mixture, and it's very, very video intensive, but it's not curated. And I do have, to your point, I have this debate with my wife all the time. She says, you should have a fewer posts, more beautiful, more curated. My consultant said, you should relax about being so curated, and it's more important to be authentic and to put stuff up that is just clips and snapshots of how you go about your day and how you go about your business. That's what you see here. I think it's working because it's growing faster than in the old days when I had a more curated and less content.
Okay.
But I mean, I look at it and I say, I want to be more beautiful like Jonathan Stein and Samantha Yanks. But this is working for me because it is authentic.
It is who you are.
Regular.
It's who you are.
Right.
Okay. The one thing all of us haven't talked about at all, and it doesn't seem that any of us are doing it, but is TikTok. Now, none of it, it used to be that you had to do a dance. You don't have to do a dance. There are people just doing whatever on TikTok. How do we feel about that platform? Are they going to ban it in the US? I mean, what's going to happen?
I'll jump in for a second. I think that I'm going to say the same thing that I think all of us are kind of consistently saying across the board. Social media only works if it's organic to you. TikTok is not organic to me. And maybe it's because it started out to what you're saying, Roberto, in this, concept of you had to learn a dance. It all seems so silly. First, my daughter wanted me to do it. Then she was horrified if I tried to do it. And then for me, I was like, I don't know, Jonathan, you said this before, like Facebook lost you a few years ago, like TikTok just lost me at that point. And if I have to try at something on this level, listen, I'm like the hardest worker, but if I have to try to make a social media platform work for me, then it's probably not the right fit. I tried Be Real. Some things are also more age appropriate, where I do think, first of all, video is key. There's absolutely no question about that. But where I think that Instagram, although they, took a lot of heat for this, their response with Reels made sense. Instagram is an intuitive platform to the vast majority of people. And so if you are an Instagram user, they just made it too easy to not use Reels. And for me to jump around, I also manage professionally. Aside from all of this, I have a professional job, which is, I manage other brands' content, and you like what is generally intuitive to you. And you have to remember that each platform has different snippets and types of content that work for them. It is not as simple as saying, what I'm going to use on TikTok, I'm going to use on Snap, and what I'm going to use on Snap, I'm going to use on Instagram, and this is going to be on Stories, and that's going to be on Reels. I mean, that is a futile battle for anyone. So, it just depends on what platforms work for you. I would say no matter where you find it, video is key. On the flip side, for all of this, I don't think anyone can say it better than the way Gary Vaynerchuk said it. You can't have all your eggs in one basket on one platform. You just simply can't. So whether, you are as prolific on every platform or not, I think it's important, even if you're not present on them, to understand them, depending on what field you're in, what they're used for, why they work, what they're appropriate for, and who they're appropriate for. But the last thing I'll say, and I think we've all kind of touched on this briefly, well, it's never the last thing I'll say, but the last thing I'll say on this is no matter what platform you're using, and I include like text and email or your website, it all should look and feel the way you want it to look and feel. Like when I get nonsensical texts, I'm like, that person's off brand for me. Sorry. Like it's the same way where, a visual on Instagram or a video on TikTok, it can all be part of one holistic brand. TikTok is no longer, and I think Roberta, to what you're saying, it's no longer a platform for like silly dances. It might have lost me, but it hasn't lost its footing in terms of importance and the power of it at all.
No, for sure. Jonathan, talk to us about Anthony. Anthony, you said Anthony's followers exploded, but it was basically because of TikTok, and he's not dancing.
No, I wish he could join us today, but a partner on my team, Anthony, who's also my marketing director, built over 155,000 Instagram followers in a few months. He's one of the most followed real estate agents on TikTok. And, as a testament to Samantha's point about doing what's authentic for us, it's his most authentic thing that he does. He's easy on camera. He's likable. I've watched every single other person that does real estate videos on TikTok. No one comes close to him. He's the best that's out there. He's the most genuine. It's the most seamless for him to do it. And now he has people that come to him from all over the world that want him to do their properties, and he gets to be very discerning about what properties he features, and he's just awesome at it.
That's great.
Yeah. Are these spontaneous, or do they just look spontaneous?
They look spontaneous. He has, a pretty cool organic way about going about things, and he just kind of wrote his own guidebook on how to do Instagram and TikTok for real estate in his own idiosyncratic way, and it's just really cool to watch.
Is that 14.3 million views on that thing right there?
Yep, in 2 days.
Jeez.
Yeah,
Unbelievable.
That's incredible.
He's awesome at it. He's really he's out and about doing a filming right now, or he'd be here. But yeah, he's
That view.
He's great at it.
I think though also to like what you.
He's got 150,000 in Instagram and 200,000 followers in TikTok. So he's been able to do it on both platforms. And I know many agents in New York, luxury agents, who focus their energies on Instagram, have tried to break through on TikTok and not been able to do it.
No, and I think he I'm not sure the exact number, but he has he has 22,000 subscribers on YouTube as well. Yeah.
Unbelievable.
No, it's cool. It's cool to watch. He's making it work for him. And he really captures that audience that he was going for. He had a mission and sought out to do it, and met a lot of resistance from, call it, more seasoned agents that did not want to grant him access to their properties, that didn't understand what he was trying to do. And he proved them all wrong, many of them wrong. And now many of them come to him and ask him to come tour their properties. And now he gets to be very picky with it.
I think it's so cool. Also, like one thing that you said, I mean, I don't know if it was one of the initial questions, John, but like, does social media sell real estate? I would just argue that it certainly doesn't not sell real estate, right? Like, I think if you look at social media and its connectivity to any industry, if you're going to look at it as like a numbers game, did this transaction go through because they saw said property on said platform? you're really kind of getting into the weeds on it. And, it's never a good idea, I think, to kind of like generalize anything with this. These kind of platforms can certainly help if used, elegantly and properly. And I think that's what's so cool about what he's doing. You're taking $135 million, unless I got that number wrong of what you were just showing, but $130 million properties or whatever it is, and really using technology tools to show things in a different way. And whether that's AI, we haven't gotten into any of that and probably won't in this conversation since I know we're running out of time. But whatever tools are available to you, it's about, I think, being educated about them, but never ever thinking that like, because I'm a certain age, like that's not in the cards any longer. Or there's just so much out there at this point. There's so many options that, whether it's YouTube, whether it's a podcast, whether it's Instagram, I mean, I could go on and on and on and on. There is a platform that's for you. It's just about figuring out which one it is. And it's never going to work if you're not comfortable with it, right? Like I know what I'm not comfortable with. And there's a lot. But I also know what I'm really comfortable with, and what I'm comfortable with like translates and I'm good at. And I think Jonathan, you're kind of, we're both in the same boat about that.
Samantha, is there a formula, or Jonathan, is there a formula? Jonathan, you get to watch Anthony and you say, oh, he does really interesting walkthroughs of really interesting properties. I could do that. I mean, is there a formula? Samantha, can you take an ordinary realtor in my office and say, I can make you, I can get you 100,000 followers. There's a formula. It's available. I can hire the right editor, the right camera people. We can write some scripts and we can get you there. There's a formula. Or is it a certain what is it called? Je ne sais
quoi.
Yeah, that.
I personally think it's a combination of two. But the most important question is like, why would we want a formula? Why would we want to replicate what other people are doing? What makes social media successful, and I hope Jonathan and I have pleaded our cases here, is it has to be organic and you have to be the first at something, and I love, Jonathan, what you were saying, like Anthony was doing this. I'm sure he was clamoring to get access and now he's highly coveted. Everybody wants him in their properties. It's because he did something innovative and new in an industry that didn't have and wasn't very welcome to change. It's very, very traditional. I worked in an industry that was very, very traditional, right? I worked in glossy magazines when their digital was it wasn't even secondary. It was like tertiary. It wasn't even, but early on, I always thought it's got to live beyond these pages, right? And for real estate, it has to live beyond these four walls. Like, how do you live in it? Why do you want to be in it? What's going to compel me to live my life in this place and make it, extraordinary and fun? And I think what Anthony did is like not something anyone should try to replicate. It's about trying to come up with a way that you can have a different point of view to the same old. What I'm doing, reporting on Connecticut, I am far from the first. I am far from the last, right? I'm just doing it in a way that makes sense to me, which seems to translate to other people. And if it didn't, and I said to you, John, on a call, a few weeks ago, if it didn't, I would have stopped, because I'm not at it for like the likes or the reward. I'm at it because I like the response that people give me, which is that was really helpful. Or, I went into this restaurant and I told them the Connecticut edit recommended it and they, sent over a dessert or something. That kind of life component to me is what drives me. And it sounds like for Jonathan, the same thing. You want to give people access to you and to what you have, but you have to do it like in your own way. If I went around posting like myself on motorcycles, people would laugh, right? But that's like authentic to Jonathan. And I'm sure if he started posting photos of him in flower fields, I don't know, maybe Jonathan, that, you get off on that. I'm not sure, but you know what I mean? Like that wouldn't be authentic to him.
Thank you. I do love flowers. So
all right, well, we'll go to a flower market together, but you know what I mean?
I totally do. To answer your question, John, I've tried speaking to a camera and doing tours like Anthony does. I hate it. I'm not good at it. It's the last thing I want to do. It's not me. It doesn't feel authentic. It feels very forced. I don't feel comfortable doing it. So I lean into what I'm good at, and Anthony does his thing, and I get to applaud him from the sidelines and watch him just absolutely crush it and be better than every other single person that tries to do it. And it makes me super proud that I get to work with someone who's so good at it. And I can lean into what I'm good at and what excites me about the business, and that's just the people. I get to work with really cool people, and that's my favorite part about it.
Awesome.
Roberto, are you going to do more social media?
I'm going to try. I got my mentor right there, Jonathan. You guys, thank you so much for being here.
Yes,
Really
thank you.
appreciate it. Amazing. So great to hear all of your thoughts. Very valuable.
Thank
I
you so
think
much for
we're-
having me.
Thanks, guys.
I think it's an elusive subject. I think it's very subjective, as what, the last point that was made was there's no one formula that works for everybody. I can't be like Anthony Park. I can't be like Jonathan Stein. As much as I want to be a little bit more curated, perhaps, but I can't be Jonathan Stein, and I'm not going to go buy a motorcycle.
Yeah.
He's got an Austin Healey.
And thank you, Samantha. I think this is very exciting what you're now building in Westport in Connecticut. Very exciting. I'm now a follower, and I can't wait, to get your restaurant tips and your farmers market tips. Count me in. So thank you very much.
Don't forget us in the Hamptons, Samantha.
Don't forget what?
Don't forget us in the Hamptons.
Oh, goodness. No, I never can. It's in my blood.
Okay.
All right.
Thanks,
See you guys.
Thank you so
Bye,
much.
everybody. Thank you.
Skipper.
See you next week.